Your city is hacking your brain and you haven't even noticed. Hey, what's up? Have you ever thought that the city where you live is much more than just a backdrop for your life? We usually see it as wallpaper, a set of streets and buildings. But what if I told you it's an active participant? A secret sculptor that's molding your brain, your emotions, and even your most intimate decisions every second? Today we're going to take a deep dive, a descent through 5 levels of knowledge, and I promise you one thing. When we're done, you'll never walk down your street the same way again. Let's start with level 1, the surface, what everyone knows. The number one cliche, big cities are stressful. The constant noise, the crowds, the rush, we've all felt that tension in our shoulders. It's the most basic and universal idea about urban life, the starting point we all share. Another classic, the pace of life. Have you noticed that people in big capitals seem to walk, talk, and even order coffee as if they're on a countdown? It's not your imagination. It's a real phenomenon. Think about the last time someone walked too slowly in front of you. You felt that little pang of impatience, didn't you? That's the city's rhythm embedded in your nervous system. And what about your city's map? Some are a perfect grid like a chessboard, while others are a chaotic labyrinth of narrow streets. This isn't by chance. It has a fascinating origin story. Grid cities, like many in America, were often planned with a ruler and pencil, sometimes inspired by Roman military camps, pure logic and efficiency. Chaotic ones, as in many historic centers of Europe, grew organically like a tree, with streets following ancient paths or walls. These are 2 philosophies of life etched into the asphalt. And finally, at the superficial level, there's the idea of the personal bubble. On a crowded subway, we are physically closer to strangers than we would be to our friends at a dinner, yet we create an invisible wall. We avoid eye contact, put on headphones, we become anonymous. And here's the question. If we choose to live surrounded by millions of people, why do we try so hard to ignore them? Okay, let's recap this first level. Stress, fast-paced, planned or chaotic streets, and anonymity in the crowd. This is what anyone would tell you about city life. It's the tip of the iceberg, what's floating in plain sight for everyone. But if this is what we see on the surface, what secret engines drive it from beneath? Why do our bodies and minds react this way? It's time to dive in. Welcome to level 2. Level 2, the hidden mechanisms. Remember we talked about stress? Well, it's not just a feeling. There's a biological reason. Inside your brain, you have a small almond-shaped structure called the amygdala. Think of it as your brain's smoke detector for threats. Researchers have found that the amygdala of city dwellers is notably more active than that of people in the countryside. Your brain, in an urban environment, is constantly scanning for possible dangers, from an accelerating car to an unpredictable crowd. Stress isn't in the air, it's in your brain's hardware working overtime. Now let's talk about that personal bubble. There's an invisible rule governing it, attentional filtering. Your brain cannot process the thousands of stimuli a street throws at you every second. It would be a total collapse. So it creates a super aggressive filter. It's like a nightclub bouncer in your mind deciding what gets in and what doesn't. That's why you can walk through a crowded square and not remember a single face. You're not rude, your brain is protecting you from information overload. And city maps, how do they affect us? Here, a cognitive bias comes into play, which is basically a factory error in our brain, a mental shortcut that sometimes deceives us. It's called availability heuristic. It means our brain believes something is more likely or common if it can easily recall it. If you live in a city with a chaotic layout and often get lost, your brain starts to think that navigation is difficult in general, and you become less adventurous. In a grid city, success is easy to remember, so your brain encourages you to explore more. The city's layout is programming your boldness. Now, a mini story. For hundreds of thousands of years, humans lived in small tribes where everyone knew each other. We had a strong sense of community. Modern cities broke that. We feel lonely. And what did our brain do? It pushed us to seek third places. Not your home, first place, nor your work, second place. It's the coffee shop where the barista knows your name, the park where you see the same dog walkers, your neighborhood bookstore. These are our unconscious attempts to reconstruct the village square in the asphalt jungle. If you notice, all these mechanisms we've seen, the amygdala on alert, attention filters, the search for third places, are actually solving a fundamental human problem, cognitive overload and the need for belonging. The city is a dose of humanity too large to handle all at once, and our brain has developed these ingenious patches and strategies to survive and thrive in it without going crazy. And the last mechanism at this level will fascinate you. It's called neuroarchitecture. The idea is that the shapes, light, materials, and scale of the buildings around you have a direct impact on your mood and mental processes. For example, high ceilings have been shown to encourage abstract and creative thinking, while angular and dark spaces can generate anxiety. This changes everything. A building ceases to be a passive object and becomes a machine that can generate calm, creativity, or stress. Your city is sensing you all the time. So as we close the second level, we see that understanding these hidden gears gives us power. We are no longer passive victims of city stress. Now we know we can consciously seek out spaces with high ceilings if we feel stuck, or take a walk in a park to calm our amygdala. We begin to be able to pilot our urban experience. But if you thought we had everything clear, get ready, because this is where the story turns into true chaos. Not everything is a well-oiled machine of brain and environment. There are interests, conflicts, and paradoxes everywhere. Welcome to Level 3, the chaos of reality. And the first major controversy is gentrification. On one hand, you have the side that says it's progress. New stores arrive, buildings are renovated, crime goes down, the neighborhood is safer and prettier. On the other hand, you have those who respond, yes, but at the cost of expelling families who lived here for generations, erasing the original culture, and turning a soulful place into an expensive, lifeless display. Who is right? Both. And neither. It's a Gordian knot. Now let me tell you a secret and debunk a myth, that of the unfriendly citizen. Why does everyone think people in big cities are rude? The reason is a mental flaw called the fundamental attribution error. It's our brain's tendency to explain someone's behavior by their personality rather than their situation. We see someone who doesn't hold the door for us and think, what a selfish person, instead of, perhaps that person is late for the most important job of their life. When we talked about attentional filters, we saw the truth. It's not that they're rude, it's that their brain is in urban survival mode. And here comes a paradox that will make you think, the paradox of solitude. Never in human history have we lived so physically close to each other, millions of people stacked in a few square kilometers. And yet surveys show that cities are the epicenters of loneliness. We are surrounded by people, but we feel profoundly alone. How is it possible to be in a crowd and feel invisible? That is the great contradiction of modern life. Now let's get critical. Let's talk about hostile architecture. Those park benches with armrests in the middle so no one can lie down, those metal spikes on windowsills or under bridges. They are presented to us as urban design solutions to prevent antisocial behaviors. But let's be honest, they are designed to make life impossible for homeless people. And most of us accept it without batting an eye. So I ask you, is it ethical to design our cities to be actively cruel to the most vulnerable? Another controversy that has changed over time, the car. In the 50s and 60s, the car was the ultimate symbol of freedom and progress. We built highways that split cities in two and designed everything around the automobile. Today, the debate is the opposite. We see the car as the villain that pollutes, creates traffic, isolates people, and steals public space. Now the struggle is to pedestrianize streets and give the city back to people. Yesterday's hero is today's monster. All this leads us to a fundamental problem of the human condition, the search for identity. In a small town, your identity is given to you. You're the baker's son or the one who lives in the house on the hill. In the city, no one knows you. You have absolute freedom to invent yourself, to choose your tribe, musicians, skaters, entrepreneurs, activists. But that freedom is also terrifying. It's the burden and the blessing of having to build yourself from scratch. In summary, this third level shows us that reality is a wonderful mess. It's full of debates without easy solutions, of painful paradoxes, of uncomfortable ethical questions and power struggles. There's no formula for the perfect city, just a constant and chaotic push and pull. All right, you've survived the chaos. You've seen the complexity that most ignore. Now it's time to see the details that separate the curious from the true connoisseurs. It's time to polish the lens. Level 4, expert knowledge. Ready? First niche secret, fractal fluency. Fractals are those patterns that repeat at different scales in nature, like in a snowflake, tree branches, or a fern. It turns out our brains are biologically programmed to love them. They calm us. Most modern cities are brutally Euclidean, straight lines, 90-degree angles, which can generate subtle, constant stress. But a park with trees, or even a building with a facade that mimics natural patterns, can reduce your stress at a neurological level. It's not just pretty, it's medicinal. Now, a slightly more technical concept, but I'll explain it with a great analogy. It's called prospect and refuge theory. Imagine you're one of our ancestors on the African savanna. What's the safest place? A spot from which you can see far into the distance to detect dangers, prospect, but from a protected place where you can't be seen, refuge. Like a cave on a hill. Well, your 21st century brain is still looking for exactly the same thing. The best seat in a coffee shop is almost always the one in a corner, with your back to the wall, refuge, but with a clear view of the door and the rest of the venue, prospect. It's your inner caveman choosing a table. Let's talk about a forgotten hero, William H. White. In the 70s, this sociologist did something revolutionary in its simplicity. He set up cameras in New York City squares and simply observed what people did. No surveys, no interviews, pure observation. He discovered things that seem obvious today, but no one saw then. People love to sit on steps. They prefer chairs they can move, and they are attracted to places where other people already are. His findings transformed urban design and reminded us that cities should be made for people, not just for photos. And now the rebel vision, psychogeography. This was an idea from a group of French artists and thinkers called the Situationists. They proposed exploring the city in a radically new way, ignoring maps and letting themselves be guided by emotions and curiosity. They called this dérive, drift. It's an act of rebellion against the city as an efficient machine for getting from point A to B. It's an attempt to rediscover the hidden soul and emotional zones of your own environment, the places that attract or repel you for reasons you can't explain. Here's a fact that clashes with common sense. We know parks and trees are nice, right? But research goes much further. Studies have shown that hospital patients with a window view of trees recover faster and need fewer painkillers than those who see a brick wall. Other studies have correlated neighborhoods with more trees with significantly lower crime rates. Our intuition tells us that green is decoration. Science tells us it's a public health and safety infrastructure. And now the aha moment that connects everything. Why does a walk in the park clear our minds? The answer lies in the attention restoration theory. Our brain has a battery of directed attention, which we use for work, study, or driving. The urban environment, with its constant demands, depletes that battery. Nature, on the other hand, is full of what researchers call soft fascinations. The movement of leaves, the sound of water, and fractal patterns. Remember we talked about them? These elements allow our directed attention to rest and recharge. It's not a poetic feeling, it's a cognitive maintenance process. Reaching this fourth level of detail isn't just about accumulating curious facts. It's about starting to see your city as a living, interactive ecosystem, an organism with which you maintain a constant dialogue, even if you weren't aware of it until now. We've reached the limit of what is known. We've explored the known map from top to bottom. Do you dare to look beyond, toward the final frontier, where there are only questions and wonder? Level 5, the final frontier. Let's speculate. What will cities be like in 500 years? Perhaps they will be sensitive cities or adaptive cities. Imagine a city that uses sensors not to manage traffic, but to measure collective mood. Streetlights that adjust their color and intensity to calm anxiety on a street at night. Public sound systems that emit binaural frequencies to foster concentration in office districts. A city that not only hosts you, but actively cares for your psychological well-being. And now the deepest question science cannot yet answer. If the city is so profoundly changing our brain and our behavior, are we in fact evolving into a new subspecies, Homo urbanus? A human being adapted to process information quickly, to navigate crowds, but perhaps at the cost of losing the ability to be silent, to connect with nature, to feel part of something larger than human society. We have no idea of the long-term consequences. Here comes the idea that will blow your mind, a dizzying philosophical implication. If your environment, the buildings, the streets, the pace, so decisively shapes your thoughts and emotions, where do you end and the city begin? That feeling of anxiety you have on the subway, is it really yours, or is it an echo of the cramped cars and deafening noise? This blows up the idea that we are an independent, autonomous self. Perhaps we are more like a permeable membrane, a reflection of our environment. Let's think about the future of humanity. Massive urbanization is one of the most powerful forces of our century, alongside climate change. Mastering the art of building cities that are not only sustainable but actively make us more empathetic, more creative, and mentally healthier might not be a luxury. It could be the key to our survival and to unlocking the next level of our potential as a species. And the last idea, the most provocative. Perhaps the fundamental purpose of a city is not economic, social, or logistical. Perhaps a city is, above all, a consciousness accelerator, a machine designed to force the collision of millions of minds, cultures, ideas. This constant friction generates innovation, art, science, and new ways of thinking at a speed that would be impossible in any other environment. Perhaps cities are the tool humanity invented to force itself to evolve. And with that idea, our journey through the 5 levels has ended. We have descended from the most obvious surface to the very edge of philosophical speculation. Now, with this new perspective, it's time to contemplate the full picture. Do you remember how we started this journey? Talking about something as simple and familiar as the stress we feel in a city. It seemed like just an inconvenience, a toll to pay. And look where we've arrived now. We're asking ourselves if the city is a kind of external mind, an accelerator of human evolution that is redefining the very concept of self. We've gone from an everyday fact to one of the deepest questions about our future as a species. That has been our journey. And now I ask you directly, of all these layers we've uncovered, from neuroarchitecture to the paradox of solitude, which idea has impacted you the most? Is there anything that made you see your own street, your own neighborhood with different eyes? I'd love to read your thoughts in the comments. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for joining me on this descent. If you like these deep journeys that change your perspective, consider subscribing, because we've barely begun to scratch the surface of all there is to discover.